CHAPTER 12 of Ayesha, the Return of She. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Christine. Ayesha, the Return of She, by H. Rider Haggard. Chapter 12 The Messenger. "He's gone," I panted, "and the world hasn't lost much." "Well, it didn't give him much, did it, poor devil? So don't let's speak ill of him," answered Leo, who had thrown himself exhausted to the ground. "Perhaps he was all right before they made him mad. At any rate, he had pluck, for I don't want to tackle such another." "How did you manage it?" I asked. "Dodged in beneath his sword, closed with him, threw him and smashed him up over that lump of stone. Sheer strength, that's all. A cruel business, but it was his life or mine, and there you are. It's lucky I finished it in time to help you before that oven-mouthed brute tore your throat out. Did you ever see such a dog? It looks as large as a young donkey. Are you much hurt, Horace?" "Oh, my forearm is chewed to a pulp, but nothing else, I think. Let us get down to the water. If I can't drink soon, I shall faint. Also the rest of the pack is somewhere about, 50 or more of them." "I don't think they will trouble us. They have got the horses, poor beasts. Wait a minute and I will come." Then he rose, found the Khan's sword, a beautiful and ancient weapon, and with a single cut of its keen edge killed the second dog that I had wounded, which was still yowling and snarling at us. After this he collected the two spears and my knife, saying that they might be useful, and without trouble caught the Khan's horse, which stood with hanging head close by, so tired that even this desperate fight had not frightened it away. "Now," he said, "up you go, old fellow. You're not fit to walk any farther." And with his help I climbed into the saddle. Then slipping the rein over his arm he led the horse, which walked stiffly, on to the river, that ran within a quarter of a mile of us, though to me, tortured as I was by pain and half delirious with exhaustion, the journey seemed long enough. Still we came there somehow, and, forgetting my wounds, I tumbled from the horse, threw myself flat, and drank and drank, more I think than ever I did before. Not in all my life have I tasted anything so delicious as was that long draught of water. When I had satisfied my thirst, I dipped my head and made shift to jerk my wounded arm into it, for its coolness seemed to still the pain. Presently Leo rose, the water running from his face and beard, and said, "What shall we do now? The river seems to be wide, over 100 yards, and it is low, but there may be deep water in the middle. Shall we try to cross, in which case we might drown, or stop where we are till daylight and take our chance of the death hounds?" "I can't go another foot," I murmured faintly, "much less try to ford an unknown river." Now about 30 yards from the shore was an island covered with reeds and grasses. "Perhaps we could reach that," he said. "Come, on to my back, and we will try." I obeyed with difficulty, and we set out, he feeling his way with the handle of the spear. The water proved to be quite shallow; indeed, it never came much above his knees, so that we reached the island without trouble. Here Leo laid me down on the soft rushes, and, returning to the mainland, brought over the black horse and the remaining weapons, and having unsaddled the beast, knee-haltered and turned it loose, whereon it immediately lay down, for it was too spent to feed. Then he set to work to doctor my wounds. Well it proved for me that the sleeve of my garment was so thick, for even through it the flesh of my forearm was torn to ribbons; moreover a bone seemed to be broken. Leo collected a double handful of some soft wet moss, and, having washed the arm, wrapped it round with a handkerchief, over which he laid the moss. Then with a second handkerchief and some strips of linen torn from our undergarments, he fastened a couple of split reeds to serve as rough splints to the wounded limb. While he was doing this I suppose that I slept or swooned; at any rate I remember no more. Sometime during that night Leo had a strange dream, of which he told me the next morning. I suppose that it must have been a dream, as certainly I saw or was aware of nothing. Well, he dreamed, I use his own words as nearly as possible, that again he heard those accursed death hounds in full cry. Nearer and nearer they came, following our spoor to the edge of the river, all the pack that had run down their horses. At the water's brink they halted and were mute. Then suddenly a puff of wind brought the scent of us upon the island to one of them which lifted up its head and uttered a single bay. The rest clustered about it, and all at once they made a dash at the water. Leo could see and hear everything. He felt that after all our doom was now at hand, and yet, held in the grip of nightmare, if nightmare it were, he was quite unable to stir or even to cry out to wake and warn me. Now followed the marvel of this vision. Giving tongue as they came, half swimming and half plunging, the hounds drew near to the island where we slept. Then suddenly Leo saw that we were no longer alone. In front of us, on the brink of the water, stood the figure of a woman clad in some dark garment. He could not describe her face or appearance, for her back was towards him. All he knew was that she stood there, like a guard, holding some object in her raised hand, and that suddenly the advancing hounds caught sight of her. In an instant it was as though they were paralysed by fear, for their bays turned to fearful howlings. One or two of those that were nearest to the island seemed to lose their footing and be swept away by the stream. The rest struggled back to the bank and fled wildly, like whipped curs. Then the dark, commanding figure, which in his dream Leo took to be the guardian spirit of the Mountain, vanished. That it left no footprints behind it I can vouch, for in the morning we looked to see. When, awakened by the sharp pangs in my arm, I opened my eyes again, the dawn was breaking. A thin mist hung over the river and the island, and through it I could see Leo sleeping heavily at my side, and the shape of the black horse which had risen and was grazing close at hand. I lay still for a while remembering all that we had undergone, and wondering that I should live to wake, till presently above the murmuring of the water I heard a sound which terrified me, the sound of voices. I sat up and peered through the reeds, and there upon the bank, looking enormous in the mist, I saw two figures mounted upon horses, those of a woman and a man. They were pointing to the ground as though they examined spoor in the sand. I heard the man say something about the dogs not daring to enter the territory of the Mountain, a remark which came back to my mind again after Leo had told me his dream. Then I remembered how we were placed. "Wake," I whispered to Leo, "wake! We are pursued." He sprang to his feet, rubbing his eyes and snatching at a spear. Now those upon the bank saw him, and a sweet voice spoke through the mist, saying "Lay down the weapon, my guest, for we are not come to harm you." It was the voice of the Khania Atene, and the man with her was the old Shaman Simbri. "What shall we do now, Horace?" asked Leo with something like a groan, for in the whole world there were no two people whom he less wished to see. "Nothing," I answered. "It's for them to play." "Come to us," called the Khania across the water. "I swear that we mean no harm. Are we not alone?" "I do not know," answered Leo, "but it seems unlikely. Where we are we stop until we are ready to march again." Atene spoke to Simbri. What she said we could not hear, for she whispered, but she appeared to be arguing with him and persuading him to some course of which he strongly disapproved. Then suddenly both of them put their horses at the water and rode to us through the shallows. Reaching the island, they dismounted, and we stood staring at each other. The old man seemed very weary in body and oppressed in mind, but the Khania was strong and beautiful as ever, nor had passion and fatigue left any trace upon her inscrutable face. It was she who broke the silence, saying "You have ridden fast and far since last we met, my guests, and left an evil token to mark the path you took. Yonder among the rocks one lies dead. Say, how came he to his end, who has no wound upon him?"